All right, hey guys, good afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started. I know that it's 1:01, so we're right on track here. And as I kind of roll, there are more and more people jumping on. Pretty good attendance today. I know about where you are, but here in New Hampshire, it is a horrible day. It is there are looking out the window and it is just downpouring right now. But there's some snow on the ground. There's ice and the kids had school canceled. Just a terrible, lousy December day, and I know that it's not exactly perfect all across the country, but that probably could be an indicator as to why we have so many people on the call today. So that's really good. Hey, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do the fourth installment of our lawn care in the danger zone fourth quarter workshop, and as we kind of ramp up to today's topic, let's just review a little bit. We're doing these sessions on Tuesdays from at 1 o'clock through December 16th, and this is the fourth of 5 segments, and I've always posted them at that website you see there on the screen. And I did just post last week's this morning. We had a busy week last week with a live Be Safe training here in Manchester, New Hampshire, so it was kind of a hectic week. And I was delayed in getting it off to you guys, but it's posted at the website now, and I think I had emailed a link out to it as well. So as we kind of roll along here, just in review, we did the renewal, we did analyzing last year's data, we did projecting the following year. Today we're going to talk about your marketing plan, and then we'll finish up with your sales process next week. But as we've said all along, the goal here is that we hope at the conclusion of this workshop you'll have a legitimate roadmap for where you want to go in 2015. So when I was beginning to start the introduction to today's topic, I was reading the description that we wrote in the initial, I don't want to say advertisement, but the initial collateral that we posted to get you guys to sign up for it, members of the Be Safe Network and others as well. And it just kind of made sense for me to copy and paste what I had written in the description of it, and I guess I'll just read it again so we can kind of set the table here a little bit. It says, you certainly want to grow your business. If you're in this industry to maintain the status quo, you're the exception, not the rule, because expedient and robust growth is the hallmark of an up-and-coming lawn and landscape business. And your marketing plan has to be a surgical process that begins on January 1st and continues every single day of the year moving forward. Many successful lawn care companies actually consider themselves marketing firms as much as they are lawn care services. We'll touch on that point with significance later on in the session. And if you think that your marketing plan revolves around the yellow pages and referrals, you couldn't be more mistaken. You need lead sources that convert immediately. In other words, the world has changed, and those who embrace that change and those who understand how to market are those who are growing. And if you're not going into this open-minded, or you're not going into this with or into your next campaign or your next fiscal year with at least some sort of progressive approach, guess what's going to happen? I don't even need to tell you. So what we're going to talk about today is the difference between your marketing plan and your marketing approach and your sales systems, and that they're two very different things. So just to kind of, again, kind of set the stage for where we're going, because everything we're doing is based on the previous week's session. Let's review that a little bit. The first one was the renewal, and that was sort of the benchmark, or the jumping off point, with not as much continuity to the following sessions, but the renewal really sets the table for everything you're going to do the following year. It's the last chance that you've got to engage with your customers. The ultimate goal is to drive cash flow, to make sure that when we get to later in the season, you're able to cover your overhead expenses, and you can put some of that into marketing, and that's what we'll talk about today. But the renewal process is all about driving cash flow and preparing for your marketing. We talked about how it has to be done in a 3-phase implementation. The first phase is clearly finished for, I would say, just about all of us. The first phase was about leaving that first renewal with your last visit to the home. And I think at this point we've pretty much gone beyond that as we approach the holidays or Christmas. And as always, it needs to revolve around offers, calls to action, and deadlines. It has to be a simple way for them to reply to you and pay you, simple vehicles for response. The next week we talked about how to analyze the year that you were completing. And this is so important. The need to know your numbers. If you want to move forward, you have to know where you've been and what you've done. And all of strategic planning really revolves around knowing what your numbers are all about. And we talked about how there are 4 key segments to your business: your product or your service, operations, marketing, and finance. And we also tried to emphasize that the segments 2, 3, and 4 outweigh the importance of 1 by a lot. And then we talked about the sentence, I'm a business owner. I'm not a business owner. I'm a guy that owns a business. Just because we're lawn and landscape guys, that doesn't mean that we're not, intelligent or responsible for a lot of moving parts. And the operations, marketing, and finance are really, really far outweigh the importance of what you actually do. If you're in the field working every single day, you're really neglecting those other 3 phases of your business. Part of that analysis that we completed was that it's important to simplify what you do. You absolutely have to take a look at, we just talked about moving parts. You have to simplify all of your service offerings. And we mentioned that if you've got 100 different things that you do, you really need to peel those back. And, of course, make sure that you're tabulating, quantifying, and articulating all of those key statistics. It's important that when you do that analysis, you keep good track of them. Based on that analysis that we did the previous year, we took that information and we built a projection for next year. And this was all about budgeting and projecting. And projecting is all about improving what you did the previous year. You need to know what you were able to accomplish, think about what you could have done better, and using those key statistics, write a plan to improve upon that. And in order to do that, you need to know what actually happened. And we talked about analyzing that data in the previous session. This isn't something that we do overnight. This isn't something that we do just in the course of a 60-minute webinar, or as I've been doing the last couple of weeks, keeping it to 45 minutes, and that's a good thing. So this is something that you really need to spend weeks on, putting together legitimate projections. And we typically like to build projections that are a little bit beyond realistic, and we call them stretch goals. So don't put together wimpy, easy goals to hit. Make sure that you're being progressive and putting together stretch goals. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next phase and how to build this whole system? You guys know how to ask questions. Just if you type them into the control panel there, I can answer them right away. I'll stop every now and then just to ask if you do have any questions. Nobody's chit-chatty today. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So today's session is about marketing, about developing that marketing plan based on the projections that we put together last week. And again, we built those projections based on the analysis that we did the previous week. So at the conclusion of today's session, you should absolutely know the difference between sales and marketing. That's the overwhelming theme here today, that they are 2 very different things. And we should be able to have an executable marketing strategy by the end of today's session as well, based on the projections and the budgeting that we did last week. And by the end of this session today, you should be able to take that plan and have it really flowed out through the course of the winter and the spring into summer. I think of the marketing season really is annual. You need to always be marketing and selling services. But in lawn care and landscaping, when we talk about that core service that we're attempting to sell, you do have a pretty small window to get that done. If you're in the north, it's a little bit longer, but for the further south that you go, and I was going to look at who was on today. I haven't even done that yet. See how many of my good friends from the deep south are on today. Your window is much shorter. It's very difficult to execute that marketing plan when it's you're out on the road beginning as early as January or February. So you really need to that makes the planning part of it that much more important. So we're going to talk about how to kind of differentiate again between that marketing and that sales strategy. But this is something that I was looking at one of my older presentations that came up, and then as an independent lawn and landscape service, you've said it many times before, they're charging you what? So when you're talking to a potential customer and they've gotten an estimate from maybe one of the national companies, True Green Scots or somebody like that. So many of those big lawn and landscape companies, they really are marketing companies in disguise, and they've got salespeople who are ready to beat your price no matter what you do. And there's certainly an issue. Many of you have to compete with those big companies, and they're going to beat you almost every single time. The best way to build your business in this cutthroat pricing culture isn't always what you think. It isn't about being the best at customer service or saying that you're able to treat your customers better than anybody else. That's small thinking, and I hear that a lot from people when you say, how are you going to compete with the bigger companies? Oftentimes the answer is, well, we're going to work really hard. We're always going to answer the phone. We're going to have awesome customer service. We're going to really be the best at what we do. And I don't think that makes a ton of sense when it comes to growth, because you should be doing that anyways. You really should be focusing on being a super company when it comes to customer service. And as most of you are independently owned or small to mid-sized companies, that should be part of your strategy anyways. But if you want to grow your business and compete with those big guys, you have to find a way to sort of act like them, and not in all the bad ways. And I don't always mean to completely pull your pants down and cut your pricing either. But you need to implement a strategy that is a real strategy that really rivals what those big companies are doing. Trust me, True Green and Scott's and Spring Green and those bigger companies have significant marketing operations, that is even bigger than their actual service offering. So you really need to figure out how to, when I say act like them, that can be misconstrued, fairly easily. When I say act like them, I mean put together a good approach to grow your business. This is something that we see all the time: analyze, simplify, plan, implement, and adjust. And we have done the analyzing part. We've done the simplifying part. We've done the planning part, and we're going to follow through with that in terms of the planning. The implementing part is going to be up to you, and then the adjusting is something that you kind of do as you go along. So we're going to do that planning part. The question, let me ask you guys a question. How many of you spend as much time on marketing as you do on service? How many, does anybody actually think that they put as much time on marketing as they do on their service, on the actual service part of their business? I know that a couple of you are typing things to come in here. Several of you say that you do put a lot of emphasis on it, but I don't think anybody is willing to say that they take as much time in terms of a market. Right, not even close. Not even close. Well, it's true. You're not alone. Bob, that's a good question too. Let me. You know what? Why don't I? When it comes to agronomic questions, the questions about soil testing. Why don't I address that offline, or I'll drop you an email because it's a little different than what we want to talk about today, but it's a good question. And again, the responses keep coming in, and they are, hey, what's up, Kevin? A small fraction. I try, but it doesn't always happen. Not even close. And that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to growing your business. If you aren't able to implement a plan that's going to purposely grow that customer count and grow that revenue, then you're going to be stuck in the danger zone, and that's what we're trying to help avoid with these sessions. So let's talk about a couple things in regards to the difference between marketing and sales, because it gets even more complicated than just implementing a gigantic marketing plan or strategy, because if both segments aren't really firing appropriately, the marketing segment of what you do and the sales segment of what you do, you could waste a lot of money. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. You need to know specifically how to implement and how to define the difference between the two. So when we talk about marketing synergy when it comes to the green industry, we want to say the interaction of multiple elements in one system to produce an effect that's different from or greater than the sum of their individual effects. And what I mean by that is that it isn't just a single input that you need to focus on. You have to build a plan that generates leads from many different sources, not just referrals, not just the yellow pages. I always joke about the yellow pages, but I don't think that anybody even considers the yellow pages a lead source anymore. It used to be that many of us would just put an ad in the yellow pages and the phone would ring. And of course, there's lots of competition for that online. But you know, in the past, lots of us would grow from referrals and yellow page ads, and that's so far from the truth nowadays that, you know, it's actually a joke. I kid about it. So the point is that when you build a plan that focuses or incorporates many, many different lead sources, all of those lead sources begin to work a little bit better. And that's what I meant back right here when I said that the interaction of multiple elements in a system to produce an effect different from or greater than the sum of their individual effects. If you have one lead source, it's going to perform okay. If you've got 20 lead sources, each one of those 20 is going to improve and work more effectively and efficiently than they would if they were on their own. And I think, you know, as we talk through that, it should begin to make sense to you. We absolutely have to discuss the difference between sales and marketing because they're two different strategies now. That's what I just said. Let's talk about 8 keys that open the door to that marketing synergy. What are 8 things that kind of help us put together that synergy that we talked about? How do we get to that point? How do we get there? And again, we're not talking about your sales process. We're not talking about how you close a sale or make a new, you know, get a new customer or get a new contract signed. We're going to talk about 8 things that open the door to marketing synergy. Without even knowing it, that sounds kind of cheesy, but you know, it's the truth here. So, planning. We talked about planning. This whole thing is about planning. And when it comes to marketing, planning is about being able to identify your demographic. Who are you going after? Who is your what is the demographic, or what group of people is willing or will be willing to buy your core service from you? You have to identify who those people are, sort of as an overwhelming approach. In terms of sales, your planning process is making sure that the demand of that demographic matches the services that you provide. So you can identify that demographic, and that's the marketing approach. The selling approach is being able to trigger that, to make sure that you can match it up, what you do, matching it up to who those people are. Your process, your company in front of as many potential customers as you possibly can do. You have to make sure that your demographic, or the people that you've identified as somebody who would be interested in purchasing what your core service is, you have to get in front of them. And that process is difficult. You know, that process isn't just yellow pages and referrals anymore. In terms of the process, your sales strategy would be a representative of your company, a salesperson making a sale in regards to collateral or something that was able to get in front of that demographic in the first place. We're almost kind of talking about a microcosm, macrocosm in terms of processes here, because with marketing, you're talking about getting your company, your business, your brand in front of all of those people. Sales is one person to one person, you know, B2B, B2C, I mean, business to consumer, making that sale, triggering that buy. What's your focus? How does your focus apply to both marketing and sales? In marketing, it's that appeal. It's that appeal it's the ability to solve a problem. And that's what really marketing is all about, getting in front of that demographic, matching it up, determining what their problem is, and making that emotional connection to them. Okay, so the appeal to the demographics, emotions with your programs, products, and services. Really that core service. We always talk about that one core service. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to kind of blow them up with sticker shock. You don't want to get the pricing for everything that you do in front of them all at once. That focus has to be on that core service in front of that demographic to trigger sort of a mechanism that fills a void, right? Once you determine what that particular problem is, how do you fill or solve that problem? When it comes to sales, hitting the goals that you set up is what the focus is. Again, it's almost a microcosm, macrocosm, with marketing being you know, the overall strategy, and the sales being that one I keep using the word trigger, and it's not on purpose, but that one element, that one thing that makes the sale. In terms of a timeline, when it comes to marketing, getting your brand in front of that demographic, solving that problem, building that brand, developing a relationship with that demographic, identifying what that problem is, getting all that in front of that demographic has to be a long-term or annual commitment. When you're talking about sales, you're talking about, again, that trigger that makes the sale at that instant. You really kind of take the pipeline, swell it down to that one person, and the salesperson has to make the sale in the moment. Marketing is long-term. It's an annual commitment to brand building. When the sales strategy is all about pulling the trigger on that. I keep using the word trigger, and it's not by design, but it's sort of telling about what we're trying to accomplish here. The strategy, marketing is a pull strategy, sales is a push strategy, and that's when you talk to anybody in retail, they'll get that more than anybody, and in a way that translates to what we're attempting to do. Marketing, you're trying to pull people in with the ability to solve their problem. Sales, you're trying to push them into agreeing to use your service or to buying your core service. It's a push-pull strategy. I want to stop for a minute and remind you all that we're talking about marketing today. We want to focus on, or I want your brain to be kind of considering how that marketing strategy applies, or that marketing element of what we're discussing applies to your business. Next week, we'll talk about that sales process, that microcosm when you're at the bottom of that funnel. How do you pull the trigger? Again, I just said trigger, and again, I don't mean to. How do you get that customer to actually buy your service in the moment? The concept of all of this in terms of marketing is a wide, vast, infinite if possible. We always want to continue to get that brand in front of the demographic, solve the problem all the time on an annual basis. We talked about the timeline and how it's an infinite approach. It always, you want to do everything you possibly can to build that brand. The sales concept means narrow and in the moment, meaning, again, making the sale as it happens. The priority. Marketing is an identifiable cycle. We're planning, we're building a strategy today. We're going to talk about how to build that sales, not sales, how to build that marketing plan, how to put together a bunch of different sources that are all going to work in a synergy to help each one work more effectively and efficiently. The sales priority is right then closing the sale, getting the customer to agree. And this is an important one. Do you know the difference between no and no, not right now? More often times than not, when it comes to lawn care, and I guess I'm kind of talking about fertilization services here, it's not no. It's no, not right now. How many times? That's why we work all winter. Our marketing campaigns run all winter, because all of the sweat equity that you're putting into things in January, February, and March, that all comes out in the wash in April and May. Again, I guess I'm talking about from a northern perspective, but on a much smaller scale in the south, transition, whatever, you do a lot of work without a lot of return in the beginning of that cycle. That brand building, that marketing, that strategy that you're putting out there to try to get in front of people, that return isn't always immediate, especially days like today where it's winter. You're not going to be able to get those customers to pull the trigger right away. However, if you can get them their attention, and later on when it is time for them to make a buying decision, they're going to remember you. You will have touched them many different times through different marketing sources and individual sales processes, that when the time comes, they are ready to make a purchase from you. So there is a significant difference between no and no, not right now. Got it? How do you identify your brand? What is the identity, and how does that apply to a marketing and sales approach? In marketing, the construction and development of your brand's reputation and identity. And reputation, man, we could do a whole we could do a whole segment on that, because reputation marketing is really an up-and-coming source that I don't think we've completely grasped how to actually implement. You know, reputation management, sites like Yelp and reviews on Google, all of those local things that are becoming more and more important, and they can hurt you. All it takes is one angry person to, I'm sure that there's several people on this call today that have had some experience with negative reviews, because it happens a lot now. So your reputation management and how you identify your brand and your company on a much larger scale is your marketing approach, whereas your sales approach is meeting that acute need through personal interaction. Again, it could be right on the telephone, it could be through email interaction, even texting nowadays, and the ability to solve that problem that a customer has right in that moment. You know, for instance, the problem in springtime may be, you know, the customer needs that crabgrass preventative put down. They haven't had the crabgrass preventative put down. You solve that problem by meeting that acute need by saying, I can have somebody out there tomorrow. That's how you pull that trigger and make that sale. Whereas in marketing, it's a much more broad scale approach. You're trying to develop that reputation and identity of your company and of your brand. Two very different things. Okay, so now, how do we build a bridge between the two? Sales and marketing are two completely different departments in your organization. Perhaps the departments are filled with the same people or different people, but they have to operate with two very specific goals in mind. Most of us are small enough where we don't have a marketing department and a sales department. Some of you may. You may have employees who work on marketing, and you might have employees or salespeople that work on making sales. But when it comes right down to it, after all of those characteristics that we just discussed in terms of identifying what the difference between the two actually is very simple. Marketing generates leads. Sales generate revenue. Marketing generates leads. Sales generate revenue. And they live in two completely different worlds. And you have to be able to understand the fact that they have to be separate. They do have to live in two completely different worlds. How do we bridge that gap? How do we connect the two? As lawn and landscape companies, we are not necessarily the best at acknowledging not only that this sort of equation exists, but then actually following through and making sure that we can marry those two. How do we cross the bridge? Marketing will generate a lead. Sales generates revenue. The shorter that bridge becomes in today's day and age, the more successful that you're going to be, the higher that closing rate is going to be. The closer those two elements are to each other, and I'm talking in terms of a timeline, when that marketing generates that lead and that sales specific part of the equation begins to solve that problem, the closer they come in relationship to sort of a time, the higher your closing rate is going to be. Can we build a bridge between the two of them? Yeah, we can. Of course we can. Are there any questions? I know that a couple of you guys were. Let me look real quick. Okay. So before we determine how to cross that sales bridge, we need to understand how to plan and implement a really good marketing strategy. And there are certain elements that fit into that plan that you absolutely have to have a firm understanding of each and every one of them. Let's define the most important ones. How do we make this all come together? How do we determine what those lead sources really are going to be? What are the elements to make sure that when we think about trying to build that bridge between sales and marketing, how do we facilitate that? What are the things that make that happen? What are those things that will be able to make that happen with more ease? There are certainly some very concrete things that you just are requirements, absolute requirements. The first thing that you have to have when you're kind of building that marketing strategy and you want to build that bridge towards that sales system, you need a list. Your list has to be comprised of every potential customer in your market, your demographic, including SFDUs with particular home values and incomes, their contact information. Who knows what SFDU stands for? Well, I won't wait. Single family dwelling unit. In our industry, when you're selling a service to somebody, unless you're in commercial construction or maintenance, something like that, or even municipal or schools or something, the majority of our customers are residences. If you don't know who those people are, you're starting way, way behind that big company. Trust me, that big company puts a lot of emphasis into determining who they're selling to. That data is very, very important. So you need that list. That list is going to cost money. That list is something that you have to go out and purchase. You should always be building that list, you know, every time. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So that demographic has to include single-family dwelling units with home value and income. A lot of no trailers, no condos, no apartments. You can suppress those. You know, you're not going to sell your services to somebody in a trailer park. People who live in condominiums aren't interested in you, and apartments definitely not. So you can suppress those. As data gets bigger and bigger, and those list companies become smarter and smarter, and people spy on you more and more with social media, with, you know, every little thing that you do, every buying decision that you make, every time you click on something, somebody somewhere is gathering data associated with you. That's creepy sometimes. But those list companies are able to really take advantage of that. You know, and they'll charge you for it too. At the very end of the day, you need to have income and home value. Those are the most key indicators. But a list company can tell you if somebody is interested in organics. A list can tell you if somebody has made purchases of natural foods, or if they're interested in gardening. You know, if they're interested in certain, you know, agriculture, whatever. You'd be surprised at how much information is out there, and that can help kind of tighten up the funnel for who you're going to be selling to. But I can't emphasize this enough. You need that list. You need to know who you're going to be selling to. It's very, very important. That list should be happily situated in your CRM, and it's called your marketing universe. I guess we should back up a couple of steps here and make sure that you actually have a CRM or a software program that's going to help you run your business. At Lawn Dog, we use Lawn Assistant, which is real green, and there was the marketing side and there was the active side. The active side was anybody who's you know, a customer, a cancel, a reject, somebody who's had a relationship with the company before. The marketing side is that marketing universe. That's your database. That's who you're going to be selling to. You know, it's there for direct mail purposes. It could be there just simply for data entry purposes. If you're generating leads through your marketing efforts, the phone rings. You know, hopefully there are certain times of the year where it's very, very busy. Obviously, you should be answering your telephone. If you don't answer your telephone, I want you to either just hang up now and don't come back, or commit to the fact that in the spring, especially, the phone shouldn't ring directly to your cell phone, because you're not going to be able to answer it all the time. Even if you have to have an answering service, you have to answer the telephone, especially when you're marketing, when you're actively marketing to get new customers. If you don't answer the telephone, you're doomed from the start. But say the phone rings and somebody says, I'd like an estimate, you can very simply type in their last name and all of their data comes up, and you can move on. You know, you don't have to do a lot of data entry. So that list is very, very important. Have I said that enough times? The second most important part of developing this marketing approach and preparing to marry it with the bridge is you have to be as diverse as you possibly can with your lead sources. You can't just depend on referrals, and we talked about that at the beginning of the session today. The more diverse your approach is, the more lead sources that you have, the more different angles you're going at that demographic, the better and more efficiently each of those sources is going to operate. So the diversity is important. This is a list we talked about, or I think we had open last week, and after this slide, we're going to kind of go into the actual planning using some of the numbers we put together last week based on some of the analysis we did the week before. But here's a list of potential lead sources that you can that you should be able to implement. As you guys look at that, can you think of anything else, or do you have any specific questions about any of those particular lead sources before we jump off here and go to the documents and Excel? If you're able to execute at least a couple of leads or at least a strategy, you should have at least a strategy with most of these. At least 75% of these lead sources you need to acknowledge and have some sort of an implementation with. Now, that doesn't mean you need to spend a ton of dough on it. You know, television is on there. Nobody's really making television commercials. I guess that I could probably take that up. Does anybody do any advertising via television? I know you can drill it down to a certain demographic with some of the cable companies and that kind of deal. I guess television could be changed. At BSafe, we do some video advertising based on search engine optimization. Kevin says we've done the local weather channel. That's the kind of you know, driving it down to a specific demographic and geo-targeting. You never used to be able to do that with television. Radio is one of those things too, where you can't control where that message is heard. And radio oftentimes, unless you're a big company that has a very wide reach, radio doesn't work because you're making an investment to advertise in places where you don't want to go, right? Same thing goes with home shows too. Very good point. Very good point. The home show isn't necessarily always worth it. Let's talk about home shows for 2 seconds before we jump off. Home shows nowadays are not a great place to generate leads. It's a lot of times you get people, you know, just window shopping, and people go to home shows to make big purchases, to make big construction, new windows and things like that, significant investments. You know, if it's going to cost you $1,000 to have a booth at a home show, you have to make a bunch of sales at least to break even. Never mind, you know, make it worth your while to have the return on investment. So here's what I've always said about home shows. If you can wait to the very last minute, if there's a home show in your area or in your location, your neighborhood, whatever, if you can wait to the very last minute and they're willing to negotiate the fee associated with going to a home show. They absolutely are. The people selling that space really struggle nowadays to get the contractors to show up. You know, so if you want to wait to the last minute, if typically it's going to cost $1,500 to exhibit there, and you can get them down to $500, then it's worth it, you guys. Then it's worth it. And then, of course, there's a strategy involved with that. You know, you need to have some sort of an offer. If there's a deadline associated with it, there has to be a call to action, all that kind of stuff. You can't just stand there and hand out business cards, and that's not going to do anything. You usually have to give something away. The other problem with home shows that was brought up here in the question screen is that people come from all around, and there are big home shows and there are little home shows, and your demographic is probably smaller than the demographic of the actual home show. That's why I don't think it makes a ton of sense to invest significantly in doing those particular shows. Good point. Very good point there. We talked about the driveway packet last week a little bit. And Kevin chiming in again. Kevin, I'm glad you've joined us. It's been a while. You've missed the last couple. He says we've got recycled Frisbees that we throw at people walking by. That was kind of associated with that driveway packet, and we talked about how there was a company that I used to work with that would just, you know, throw tens of thousands of little packets full of swag in people's driveway. It's really almost a direct mail strategy. And Frisbees were associated with that too, just chucking Frisbees in people's yard. You might irritate a few people, but it's worth it too if you can generate leads. So we've got a whole list of things here, and if you don't have any other particular comments on any of them, we're going to jump off here and look at our actual plan. And before I do that, is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions before we move on? All right. So in the previous couple of weeks, we built this data. For those of you guys who are just joining us for the first time today, when we talked about analyzing the previous year's data, simplifying it, and then building projections based on the analysis of that data. This is what we came up with. We have a very small sort of business that we're working on here. I kind of wish that I made it a little bit bigger, but you know, everything that you do triggers something else. So I didn't go back and change everything. I kind of wanted to, but I didn't with training last week. So this was our initial analysis of the previous year. We started with 450 customers. Our revenue per customer was $432. Our core revenue as a result was this. Our upsells or supplemental services was this. Based on that core revenue, we had gross sales of this. We decided that we only wanted to grow our customer count by 10%, and this is where I should have made it 25 or even 40% because it would have been easier to demonstrate how to do that. But we wanted to grow our customer count by 10% from one year to the next year. So our beginning count was 450. We wanted to grow our customer count by 10%, so we wanted to get to 495. We wanted to finish our sales campaign to the point where we generate 495. We have 495 new customers. When you factor in cancels, based on your cancel percent that was actually happened the previous year, we determined that we only need to make 112 sales, which isn't a lot. It isn't a lot. You can do better than that. You can do better than that when you're trying to purposely grow your business. And if it's a small business like this, or if this is just a division of your existing lawn and landscape business, you should plan on trying to grow your customer count more than 10% per year, because you can do it. You absolutely can do it. So we determined that based on that 112 sales and that new count of 495, we'd have 213,000 in gross sales, and when we factored in our supplementals as they revolve around our core service, our gross sales would be $273,000, net sales at $260,000. After we plugged all that into our detailed P&L projections here, which we did last week, we determined that we were able to spend, where's my marketing budget? About $6,000 on marketing, and that should do the trick. And this business was going to generate profit of about $15,000, which is only 6%, and that's what happens with a small business. Our cash flow analysis looked like this. We had cash in, cash out. We had our net and our cumulative, and we realized that we were going to go a little bit into the red here in February, March, and April, but we were going to come out on top later on. So I guess what I'm getting at here is we need to find a way to make 112 sales, and that is not terribly difficult. I know a couple of you guys asked questions. Let's see. No, okay. I answered them. So here's all that data, again, just translated into a different sort of worksheet. This is the numbers we were looking at doing. We need to make, what did I say, 112 sales. In order to make 112 sales, when I plugged these numbers in, it was hard to keep it at 112. I came up with 135. There's nothing wrong with having a couple extra. That just threw me for a quick loop. So here are all these sources, the sources that we looked at before, all the multiple sources. A lot of the things that you're going to want to plan for are based, again, on the previous year's data. So that CRM is that important. Every lead that you ever generate has to be classified in your software. You have to know where it came from, how you generated it, and you need to know exactly how it closed. So we know that last year we closed our referral leads at 70%, and we generated 21 referral leads. You should always have that referral campaign in place. Referrals will just happen, but more of them will happen if you try to trigger people to actually give you referrals. So we've always talked about that. You have to have a referral plan where every single piece of collateral that goes out of your business, whether it's from statements to invoices to electronic to emails, everything has to ask for referrals and testimonials. And we know that that's essentially a free sale. You have to give something in return for them. Some companies give a credit, some people give cash, some people give free services. Whatever it is, you need to have that there. We know that we can get 15 sales off 21 leads from referrals because that's what happened last year. And you will always do at least as good as you did last year, usually a little bit more, but I only like to budget what happened the previous year. Reinstate. Those are cancels. Every customer who was once with you but is no longer with you anymore is a great source of a new sale. And for those of you who run big or even small maintenance businesses, anybody or construction or anything, anybody who's ever been any sort of, say you did a cleanup for somebody in 2009, you should get in touch with them every single year about using your service, your core service, whether it's fertilization, maintenance, whatever. Anybody who's ever done business with you before is a very, very good candidate to be reinstated for that core service. You're going to close those at 20%. You probably close those a little bit higher than that. I think I was reducing it a little bit because my numbers were getting too big. You'll make 5 sales off of that. Pre-qual, I've said this before, pre-qual is a nice way to say reject. Anybody who's ever requested an estimate for you before but chosen not to use your service or rejected is very pre-qualified. And you should be in touch with or contact every single one of those, whether it's through email. Typically, I'd like to see you call them. I really would. And don't over or underestimate the power of picking up the telephone, even in the off-season. And that's when we should actually be making those pre-qual calls. You'll close those much less than you'll close any other type of lead source at as little as 15%. If you have 100 rejects and you call them and next week we'll talk about how your sales process should work, you'll make 15 sales off of that. Direct mail, we've talked about that oftentimes too. Direct mail is an expensive source of generating new customers, but it's a very predictable source of generating new customers. You don't want to put all your eggs into the direct mail basket, but it doesn't hurt to mess around with it. And if you can generate 25 leads, you'll close them very high at 62% and make 16 sales. Cancel mail and reject mail is taking those reinstates and those pre-quals and literally just mailing them a proposal. And a lot of CRMs, a lot of software programs can do that for you, can generate a new proposal. I don't have anything in here, but what you can expect, you guys, is if you do a cancel mailing or a reject mailing, 1% will magically sign up, 1%. And that doesn't mean that you even do anything to try to bring them back. In terms of calling or emailing or anything like that. If you mail out a proposal based on cancels, the proposal will say something like, "Dear customer, you were once used our service. You were on our organic fertilization program. We'd like to offer you the chance to come back, and we'll give you a discount and a free application. All you have to do is do this," and that's that vehicle that we talk about. 1% will sign up, and when you're building a marketing campaign, we're trying to diversify the sources as much as we can. That's a good idea. Same thing that goes with rejects. You know what? It works out that cancels come back at a little bit higher rate than rejects do, but on average, 1% of the two will come back as a sale. Oh, the door knocking campaign. We talked about door knocking a lot at Be Safe Training on Friday, and most people don't like it, but again, as you're trying to implement a wide swath of lead sources, if you're only going to generate 25 leads off it, what the heck? Why don't you go to all of the streets where you currently have customers, get your list, make a list of every street or neighborhood that you actually have customers in, and go out there and try to drum up a little bit more business. We won't talk about the details of how to implement the good door knocking campaign, but it can work. Saw truck every year, depending on how your truck looks. It's a mobile billboard for advertising. You're going to generate 8 sales from that, from people saying, "Hey, I saw your truck in my neighborhood." It happens all the time. I know there's a couple questions here. Stand by. I'll get back to. I'm going long. My goal is to keep all these under an hour. I'm not going to do it with this one, I don't think. Landscaper is a great source of leads and sales for those who are not already landscapers. If you're just strictly a lawn care service, or even if you are a landscaping company, getting in touch with other companies who can refer customers to you is a great lead source. It really is. It's a great way to build new customers. You know, as a lawn fertilization company, if you say, "Hey, I'll refer you as a mowing company," if you refer me as a fertilization company, developing relationships with that, even a referral fee, you know, you'll do well. At Lawn Dog, we made many, many sales just working with existing landscapers. Pay-per-click, new way to market. You can piss away thousands of dollars very quickly doing a pay-per-click campaign, so be careful with it. You should talk to an expert. You should never try to implement pay-per-click or Google AdWords on your own, because you will pay way more than you need to pay. I always say that you should contact, at BSafe, we work with a really good company that's able to get us found all the time. Search, your internet search, your organic search engine optimization is a strategy you need to be working on all the time. When somebody Googles lawn care service Tuscaloosa, you need to pop up, whether you're popping up as a on the front page or near the top organically just because of search engine optimization, or Google now has that local, those local advertisements, right? Just like the online version of the Yellow Pages. And if you don't have a Google Analytics account or a Google business page, man, you have to. And there are those other organizations, Porch, Yelp, all that local advertising. You should generate a minimum of 10 leads off of that, and a minimum of 3 sales. So pay-per-click and SEO is going to generate sales. Very few in this case, because we don't need to make a ton of sales. There's still a place for telemarketing. We talked about home show. We talked about that driveway packet and the Frisbees, right? Print. Does anybody do print ads? If Mike's still on, he's going to tell me he does. I don't love print ads anymore. They're kind of expensive. They don't always have a real good return on investment, but they do work in some markets. They really do. Print ads still work in some markets. Not every market, but some of them. Mike hasn't chimed in. I thought he was on, but Mike's in Rochester, New York, and does a lot of print advertising. Oh, the dreaded Home Advisor or Service Magic. We all fight with Home Advisor and Service Magic all the time about generating leads for us, but I think it's important that you do have a Home Advisor and Service Magic account. It works well with fertilization. It doesn't work well with construction. It doesn't work well with irrigation, installation. Doesn't work well with a lot of things. When it comes to fertilization and maintenance, it does work okay. It's all about speed. When you get a Home Advisor, everybody knows what Home Advisor is, right? It's that lead generating service that you're going to pay, you know, $20 a lead for. And sometimes there's some bogus ones in there, but they're pretty good at reversing them if it wasn't a good one. It's absolutely something that you need to have on there, but you have to be a little bit careful with it, right? Especially since we're diversifying as many sources as possible. Emailing. You need man, this should be one of your biggest lead sources right now. All that data that you've collected, that list management, all those years, you need to have those email addresses for every single customer, every single person you've ever come in contact with, and you need to be sending out at least monthly email newsletters. And nowadays with programs like Infusionsoft and HubSpot and MailChimp, there's lead nurturing that you can do. So you send out an email newsletter with content in there that's of interest to your homeowners or to your potential customers. When they click on something, you can set up a mechanism that triggers they get emailed other things going down the line. A strategy that involves email communications, not just newsletters, but lead nurturing, you have to have it. You absolutely have to have that nowadays, guys. If you're not familiar with how to set that up or you're not sure what you need to do, you know, you can talk to me anytime about that. But your email strategy is going to generate a lot of sales, and in this case, it's going to generate a significant amount of them in the whole scheme of things. Event marketing, people sometimes will. We don't have anything in this particular plan, but if you are able to set up a situation where you work with another merchant, or you know you have some sort of a campaign. Somebody at BSafe once suggested to me, and it was a pretty good idea, that you know maybe on Earth Day you have a campaign where you're going to help people recycle some of the junk they've got in their garages, bags of fertilizer, old pesticides, things that you can help, a way to help them get rid of that. How many times do you go by somebody's garage and you see that old bag of Turf Builder +2 in there? A lot. and they sit in there. It's probably not, very good either. So that would be event marketing, getting people to sign up to do something like that, getting their information and send them estimates based on that. Talked about radio. Flyering is just door hanging, and that can go along with that door knocking campaign. Neighborhood production postcard. That's a term borrowed from Real Green and Lawn Assistant, where it will email postcards to all of some people call it clover leafing. You've got a customer at number 2. It's going to send a postcard to people at 4, 6, 1, 3, 5, and 10 saying, hey, we just treated your neighbor's lawn, or hey, we mow your neighbor's lawn, or hey, we did this at your neighbor's house. And we can do the same thing at you, and we're going to give you a discount if you sign up. All you have to do is do this. Social media is huge nowadays. You can generate sales on Facebook. I know for a fact you can. The geo-targeting ability of Facebook is absolutely incredible nowadays. You have to time it right, and you have to be careful that you don't spend too much. But you have to know how to solve those potential customers' problems. You have to know what they're looking to do. You have to know when to do it. And the geo-targeting with Facebook and even Twitter to a lesser extent, you can generate a lot of leads and a lot of sales. Can get a little expensive, I think. And then the other, I always love the other source, because somehow, some way, no matter how much we wanted to classify every single estimate that came through the door to the point of obsession, we still had other. There was always a bunch of other estimates, and there will be other sales, and that's a good thing. So that's an example, guys, of how you're going to build a marketing plan to grow your customers. This would represent 135 new sales. Your next step is to flow that out by month and then implement it. Put this on paper. Make sure that you know that you need to generate those 25 pre-qual estimates in January. It means you're going to pick up the telephone and call them and say, hey, we did an estimate for you before. I'd like to send you a new one. Would that be okay? I know that there are laws involved with the federal do not call registry, but when somebody has had an estimate done for them, there's a certain window of opportunity for you to follow up with them. It used to be 12 months. Hopefully it still is. You could probably stretch that a little bit. And you just need to implement it. If you need to generate 25 pre-qual leads in the month of January, you better freaking do it. That's where I see most of you guys fall apart, is that you actually don't take the step to actually do it. What you'll find is that over the course of January, February, March, April, May, and even into June a little bit, if you just follow this roadmap based on everything we just talked about, at the end, on June 1st, it's likely, in this case where we only needed 112 sales, we budgeted for 135, you'll come in somewhere around that 100 mark. I can guarantee you. If you just take the steps to actually do this, most of these aren't very expensive, right? This isn't going to cost you a ton of dough. Hopefully it's going to cost you roughly $6,000. It all kind of lines up. It's all based on projections and analysis of previous years. You'll make this sale. You'll hit this sales goal. The biggest thing, guys, is you actually just have to do it. That's the biggest step. And it sounds silly. It's that Nike commercial, but just do it plays right into it. One of the things I put into some of the other presentations that I do sometimes is 90% of success is just showing up, just being there, just actually doing it. Very important to actually try to implement it. And then you adjust as you go. If you miss a goal in January, you have to plan on adjusting and hitting it in February. If you miss a goal in February and one particular source code isn't working out or our marketing source isn't working the way you want it to be, you might want to make it up in another one. But just make sure that somehow, some way, by the end of that period, you've generated 135 sales. Actually, that should be leads. Up here, you've generated 411 leads. Find a way to generate 411 leads, and you'll make 135 sales. All right. Any questions? So now's the time to type your questions in, and I've gone for a first time over an hour. That's okay though. Let me go through them a little bit and see if I can. Maybe I've answered most of them, maybe not. Keith, what's going on, my friend? Keith asks, should you enter a cost factor for that free application and discount into the marketing program? That's a great question, Keith. The answer to your question is no. So when you discount something out, that's not a marketing expense. That's a production expense or an operational expense. That doesn't cost you, that shouldn't go against your marketing budget. If you're going to offer a free lime is always really popular. The cost of that lime, so what you're going to do is you're going to enter it as a sale for $50. Then you're going to enter a discount from -50 so that it's free. We talked about this last week, you always want to make sure you know specifically what you're doing, how much you're actually billing, and then that will show up, that -$50 will show up in discounts underneath your gross sales. But that $50 doesn't count as a marketing expense. That's a really good question, but that's an operational expense or a discount, not a marketing expense. Thumbtack is a new one, Rob. Yeah, or maybe not that new. You know what? I keep getting alerts on my phone. I signed up for Thumbtack, and somehow I have it for snow removal, and I don't do snow removal. But my phone goes off the hook, and I got to fix it, actually, because I get alerts like mad for snow removal. Thumbtack is a service that generates leads for you. They mainly through pay-per-click or online advertising for your services. When you sign up for Thumbtack, you pay for that lead. And I think it's actually more inexpensive than Home Advisor nowadays. So, you know, Rob's saying that Thumbtack works better for him than Home Advisor does, and, you know, you get a lot of new accounts that way. I agree. What are the other ones? Is Thumbtack, Home Advisor, Porch is the one we looked at a little bit. They haven't pulled it off in a big way. Angie's List is another one. Those lead generation, they're good. You know, you're not going to hit your sales goal because of them, but you need to have a membership with all of them, and you need to kind of control how much you spend, but they'll generate leads for you for sure. Dave, yeah, I'll post this. The question is, will this be posted later? It's being recorded, and it will be posted at the website with the other ones probably the end of the week or the very beginning of next week, to answer your question. How about Blue Book or contractor lead sites? I don't have a ton of experience with that. I really don't, Kevin. I guess if you're doing municipal or commercial work, or if your core service revolves around construction or bigger jobs, that would be a good place to be. All right. You know what? I think I'm cruising through these questions. I think I answered them all, and I've already gone over the time allotted. So I'm gonna wrap up. Thanks for joining me today. We had good attendance. This is sort of the conclusion of that planning process that we put together, where we looked at last year, we analyzed and simplified, we projected based on that analysis, we built a marketing plan based on those projections that we created as a result of that analysis. So, you know, I know just, you know, these 45, 60-minute segments make it seem easy and we're kind of hammering through it. These are things that you should be spending time on, and you should be really doing the exercise of building these tables and spreadsheets along with it as well. Next week, we're going to talk about that sales process. You can generate all these leads, but if you can't sell them, it doesn't matter. And that will actually complete our workshop, and you should be good to go. But thanks for joining me today, guys. I really appreciate it. Feel free to give me a call or reach out to me with anything you'd like to talk about, and I'll see you next week.